Item 7B, presentation, discussion, and possible action of the Broken Arrow Micro Transit Pilot Program. Larry Curtis.
Mayor, Council, City Manager, very pleased to bring this to you today. As we had back in August of this year, the City Council accepted a plan for microtransit that was prepared by our consultants and reviewed by our team, by Planning Commission, and then ultimately approved by City Council. Through that process, it was given to staff to come up with an actual implementation plan. And so through many, many hours of staff's involvement, we have come up with an implementation plan over the next year. So the purpose of it was to provide, of the overall transit plan, was to provide a long-term strategy and a path forward from what we've currently been utilizing in the city. Currently, the city has 2 routes that are currently operating. We have the express route, the 900, that goes from Broken Arrow to downtown Tulsa and back. And then we also have the loop route that goes around the city in both clockwise and counterclockwise on a specific route, but also can go off route when requested 24 hours ahead of time. So it was recommended by our consultant to provide a microtransit pilot program, a 6-month program cycle for the city, and to be flexible with that, and then also eventually to provide a regional express route service and to potentially expand that model. The long-term scenario, if the pilot program is successful, is to expand that throughout the entire city for microtransit service, and to eventually for that local route, the loop route that we have, to be eliminated, and to be more strategic in the long future of adding a local fixed route service back in where the highlights are noted within the microtransit program. Staff looked at, so microtransit, as you know, is basically a car or a van that provides point-to-point service. Instead of where a citizen has to get on at one location, get off at a location, or call 24 hours ahead of time, this is very much, and the best analogy that we can have is basically Uber. And so staff looked at funding opportunities and was likely able to secure the CMAQ grant through INCOG of $700,000 to provide electric vehicle-based system. So that's, it is a 80-20 match. So 80% of that is provided by the grant, 20% is provided by the city. Looking at the vehicles that are currently on the market that are available for electric vehicle services, staff has narrowed down to these 2 vehicles. And the reason for that is what is most accessible to the public and usable to the public. We looked at the Mustang, Mustang E, which is what has been ordered and we're currently waiting on for our department. But unfortunately, the entry points on the back passenger are not as customary to the normal citizens. It is a button-based system to unlock or to open the door, and so therefore can be confusing to some of our citizens. Same thing for the Tesla Y, Tesla X, Tesla 3, and various other vehicles that we looked at. It's just not as accessible. Where the Bolt, the Chevy Bolt, looks like a standard car. It's very customary for citizens to come into contact with. They know to reach down, pull the door open to be able to get in, get out. Believe it or not, this is the only vehicle that currently electric vehicle-wise that actually has that normal car type feature to it. The Tesla X is also very a user accessible type vehicle because the driver can open and close the door for the citizen. It becomes much easier, especially for our elderly citizens, to be able to get in and out of the vehicle if they are not needing ADA accessibility. We will be providing, or it is recommended as a part of the pilot, that we provide a paratransit vehicle that is non-electric, that is funded already through the capital the city's capital program that we have to provide a vehicle that is a gas hybrid type vehicle. But because of the way that electric vehicles are currently constructed, they're not able to be converted over to paratransit because of the location of the batteries. So therefore, a para vehicle will have to be a regular, either hybrid or gas type vehicle. But the Tesla specifically is able to get in and out easily by our citizens. It has more capacity, has more range, and it is already a car that it is already a brand that is in our fleet. Our police department currently uses a Tesla Y as a part of their fleet, and I believe they're looking to potentially add to the fleet as they move forward. The X is the biggest SUV that is out there, and I would say it is, and probably, GM will kill me for this, the Cadillac of all vehicles that for electric vehicle purposes. But either way, a vehicle is a vehicle to get our citizens there and back again. So looking at the capital costs for this, there are big differences. So the Chevrolet Bolt gets 247 miles per charge. The Tesla gets 333. The unit cost is $28,000, $425 roughly per unit versus $123,000. Huge difference.
So I'm confused. You're saying we don't want to use the Ford because you have to push a button rather than handle a lever?
Because you have to push a button.
Well, I know, but that's the sole purpose? That's the sole rate basis for not looking at Fords, which we've already paid for? I'm confused.
Well, I mean, in the sense of an average citizen being able to easily make it accessible to them, it's not very user interface by pushing a button, having to grab either the latch or the side and pull it open versus what a citizen is normally accustomed to, which is to grab it and just pull the door open. That is the
But
reason.
an education campaign, we don't think would overcome that issue?
We can look at that.
I'm just wondering if I'd like to have the Ford in there too, so we can compare all
That's all.
three and understand what the basis is for all of them. Does
Absolutely.
that make sense?
Mhm.
And if, I'd rather do a small education campaign, you push the button rather than pull the lever, if the Ford's the cheaper, most economical. I just said, I don't want to throw it out solely on the basis of how we access the vehicle. Does
Sure.
that make sense?
We can look at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, looking at the pilot costs, $85,000 versus $371. Long term, if the pilot program was to be successful, $142,000 versus $619,000. In either direction, the CMAQ grant can cover both vehicles, and the Ford, of course, can be in there as well. The Ford is roughly about $65,000, so it's double the Bolt, but half the cost of the Tesla. So those are basically the nuts and bolts of the difference. So, and about half the range. Chevy Bolt is roughly 247. The Ford the Ford is roughly about 287. So again, about half the range on that. The overall operational costs are what's kind of key here. While we have a grant to cover the capital costs, which is great and fantastic, it's the overall operational cost that'll be a continual cost to the city as we move forward. During the pilot program, we'll be looking, there's the 900, the 508, and the microtransit. So currently there is a counterclockwise and a clockwise route. So there's two buses that are going at any given time on the 508. So we would essentially be eliminating one of those routes, one of those loops, and replacing that with the on-demand microtransit, which would then basically even out the cost for the micro study. There would be a roughly $30,000 deficit that we would need to find in order to do that program, but they essentially balance each other out and provides a higher level of service. The pilot program is recommended by the study to do 6 months. Staff is recommending a year to do that from point to point, just so that we can have a good measurement over that whole time frame, and also base it off the seasons. If we were just to do it 6 months, it would skew the data if we were to do it for only 6 months during 2 seasons. The other thing to talk about is that staff had looked out to see the cost of doing internal, aka having our own staff members do it, hiring people to drive the vehicles, things along those lines, or reaching out to a private company. And so we reached out to a number of companies and agencies within the Oklahoma area to find out what the cost would be. Again, I'm not trying to scare council or anything like that, but I also want to prepare council for the highest potential cost that would be associated with that. So at $55 per service hour is what is being currently proposed. Now, that $55 is the same amount that we pay for the 900 and the 508, which those include vehicles, fuel, all those things. And so it is my hope that during a contract negotiation that we would be able to whittle that number down to a more reasonable amount for our own microtransit. So looking at the cost of staffing our own people versus contract, it was much cheaper to go contract than having to hire our own people to manage that, because benefits, costs, things along those lines get driven down whenever we spread that throughout a contract with another agency. So looking at a long-term solution that's providing 4 vehicles with a 5th in reserve, we would need to find roughly $197,000 in addition to, and that would be eliminating the 508 route and having the microtransit and the 900 as well. So working with our partners within the state of Oklahoma is that the financing potential partnership is that there are federal fundings out there for operational costs, and depending on who we contract with, we can make it a part of our contract that they assist us through the application process for those grants to help offset those costs. In addition, this is not taking into consideration the cost that we could pass on to the consumer. Those that ride it frequently or those that ride it even who are not necessarily para or other factors that are taken into consideration can be paying more for the service, because right now they're being charged roughly about $2 a ride, where we could see the potential of increasing that. Because if you look at the comparable of Uber or the consumer industry, the cost is much more than what we could be potentially charging. So that is it's kind of an overall cost there. The thing, the dates that we're looking at are due to the lead-up time for purchase of equipment, installation, things along those lines, is that the microtransit pilot program would start in August of next year, just so that way we make sure all the equipment is in, all the equipment is tested, everything is good to go, that our contracts are in place, and that everything is good there. In addition to that, we are, as recommended by the plan, is to move our 900 locations, pickup and drop-off locations. Currently, the 900 pickup and drop-off is located at Battle Creek Church and South Broken Arrow Baptist Church. And we would like to move those to the Rose District, which makes a lot of great opportunity for our citizens to be able to come shop, grab a cup of coffee before they grab the bus ahead of time, or grab dinner whenever they're coming back. Same thing in New Orleans Square, especially now that the construction would be over whenever we would see these moves. And so we would see the 900 move in April to these locations. And so the city parking lot that we have over by the brewery would be the pickup location. Okay. And then down in New Orleans Square, we would work with one of our property owners down there to find a location that would be acceptable, and that they would be welcoming to having people, come to their spot in the morning, picking up their vehicle in the evening as well. So that is, I'm sure there are a lot of questions associated with this, but I'm happy to answer those. Hopefully a little bit faster than Jeremy's. Yes.
Well, I'm excited about this. I've frankly been talking about doing something like this, related mostly with the senior center, but really citywide, especially as ridership goes, for probably 8 years or more. Mm-hmm. So, 10 years. So I'm very excited about this. My comments about having the Ford in the mix, notwithstanding.
Not a problem.
But I mean, this is very exciting. I think I absolutely support doing this. It makes a lot of sense. I think if you look at every study and the big diesel buses are not going to, I mean, they'll probably always have some utility, but mm-hmm. you're going to start seeing more and more of this. And it just makes sense that we study it to see how best we can implement it in our city. So, I mean, this is a lot of work. I know your department and the TED department, there's been many people touching this and different programs going on. And so I appreciate the work, and I'm excited about seeing this implemented. If we have all of our ducks in a row before August, is there a way we might be able to start the pilot program earlier if everything was in place?
Yes, it is possible. It depends. A lot of the transit companies are union-based, and because of that, they have starts and stops during certain times of the year. And so the unions, using Tulsa Transit, for example, theirs are April and August.
Okay.
And so those are theirs. Same thing with some of our other companies that are out there. That would be, America Transit, things like that. It just depends on how they're set up.
Okay. I was just curious because I thought if we had everything in place, I'd love to start sooner, but
Yeah.
I understand the nature of
It is going to be, as Councilor Udi, as you were saying, is that it is a big educational outreach program. And so that's the reason why staff is suggesting that the move of the 900 to the Rose District and New Orleans Square is a big key step up to that, to communicate exactly what that is and be able to start sharing with the public when the microtransit will be coming online, when the pilot program will be coming online. And also to hopefully announce the recommendation of a name for our transit program in the city of Broken Arrow. And it has been batted around by us of calling it the Batmobile, just because Broken Arrow Transit with dots in there, so that way I don't get in trouble with legal.
yeah.
And
We'll have
did our
to-
city manager think of that, or?
That was community development brainchild there.
But
So
we will
Nice.
have to be careful with any trademark infringements, I'm sure.
Yeah. We can just put
we can
periods
add an
in there.
extra A in there.
Yeah.
Batmobile.
Yeah, that.
So once you come up with a name, so will the car have markings so people will know that
Yes.
that's what this car is about?
That has been, as brought up in the study, was there was a lot of people did not even know that Broken Arrow even had a bus program, bus system at all. It does play a part of why we are spending, a good deal amount of money per rider. And so the whole goal of this is that while the cost may go up a little bit for the actual utilization of the system, our goal is to bring the overall cost per rider down so it actually makes more economic sense for the entire system. But yes, the vehicles will be completely plastered with the logos, and a rebranding of the 900 will also be done as a part of that.
I'm really excited about this as well. I think, right now our, the transit that we have, it's not real reliable. And so sometimes our citizens do stand out in the rain, and if they're just a minute late, or maybe even a few minutes early, they still may not get the transit that they need. And even though this may cost a little bit more, in the long run, the convenience of it and being doorstep to doorstep is going to be so much better for our citizens that don't drive or prefer not to drive. I'm really excited about
And
this.
our citizens that may need to be going to the clinic or something like that may not feel well, is that right now, it's basically a 24-hour call ahead of time, where now they can actually call 15 minutes ahead of time and be able to get there. Because there are things that come up, or they need to go to the grocery store, things like that. It's about providing that service to our citizens in a much better format.
Well, and not to be overly dramatic, but I always picture, as Councilor Ford alluded to, the 80-year-old woman carrying 3 bags of groceries, waiting for an hour for a bus, or the single mother with 2 kids in tow trying to wait. Being able to make their lives so much simpler, and that's a true service to the citizenry.
Quick question. Right, currently, so the pickup location is Battle Creek. Do we know how many cars normally park there, and how that'll affect taking up that parking lot?
Yeah, so originally, it's actually fascinating. Back in 1996, I actually used to ride the express bus from Battle Creek,
To
what was the
downtown?
old mall,
Oh,
downtown Tulsa, when I was doing an internship at Amoco. Back then, we had a huge charter bus, and it probably had 30 people riding it every single day. And then that has slowly gotten smaller and smaller, got down to a 40 seater bus that probably had about 20 on it, and now we're down to a 14-passenger van that has 2 total from both.
And we're still
south-
paying the same amount?
And we're
Yes.
paying, well, yes, because no matter how many people you're traversing on there, and still the same amount of money to get from point A to point B.
Mayor, you're right. It's a terrible waste of resources.
It is. So therefore, the impact to our parking situation in the sense of downtown Broken Arrow will be limited to about 8 vehicles a day at most. But
begin with.
To begin with.
Yep.
Hopefully more, and that,
Yeah.
use drives demand and everything else associated with that, so that would be fantastic. And so if there is an impact that we start really seeing within the parking area, of course, that strategy will need to change to see if that maybe a different location would be more suitable for that. Perhaps partnering with Broken Arrow Public Schools and the Performing Arts Center.
So Mayor, if I can, what I ask for council, it's my recommendation based on Larry's presentation is that you authorize administration to go forward with implementing the pilot program for 1 year and to purchase the vehicles, 3 vehicles in the range, whether it's Ford, Chevy, in approximately $35,000 range. I mean, obviously, we're going to be using the grant funds plus our contribution, and to try to start it August, September for sure, or as soon as practicable.
If I may, if we were to go with Ford, we may want to boost that up to 70,
Okay.
just in case we decide to go with Ford.
Well, what we have now is not working, so I really appreciate your team and everyone that's worked on this to look outside the box and to look at ways that we can help our citizens that are in need of this transportation, so I really appreciate that.
And-
I'd like to give a shout out to Micah and our staff planner, who has really devoted his time. This has been near and dear to his heart and has been instrumental in help making this happen.
Yeah, I wanted to mention a group that wasn't mentioned, because, as you know, I have a friend that's blind, and he had to move out of our city, because when his father passed away, he didn't have a way to get around, and I do go and take him. I go to Tulsa. That's the only time I go to Tulsa. But no, I go pick him up and take him to doctor appointments, and he wouldn't have left Broken Arrow if he had had transportation options that were better. So this, I mean, I just think of all the people with disabilities like him, that this will help. So,
Well, I will gladly make a motion to adopt the city manager's recommendations.
second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Whoops, mine is
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council. Great job, Larry.